Hey everyone, hope y'all are doing well and feel better about wrapping up your first major paper. I'm here just to give you a quick little video on developing the logic model and building upon the previous work that we've been doing in the course. Let me share my slides. So just to recap, I'm going to give you an example of what I've kind of been talking through during previous videos is that um, previously I did a needs assessment with a behavioral health clinic, and they provide services to predominantly low-income populations, those with mental health needs or substance use. And what the agency came to us was that they were struggling with client attrition. People were leaving care for any number of reasons, and they weren't really understanding why. And so that was our assessment. That was our plan going in, was to find out more about what's happening with attrition. And so we reviewed the literature and we found out some potential themes that may cause attrition. We conducted interviews, we analyzed the data, and it leads us up to this point where we have looked at the data and decided and informed by the literature and make a informed expertise about what do we do from this point? How do we actually address this based upon what we found from the data? Before we get there, I just want to address one quick question that was noted during the previous video, because I made some comments about deficit-based discourse that could be a challenge and be a problem in the delivery of mental health service provision. And there was some lack of clarity with what I was talking about. So specifically, when we think about deficit-based discourse, and really with respects to providing mental health service provision, there's what we caught from the data during these interviews was that there was a mentality that was being conveyed about the types of clients that were coming in, whether they had substance use problems, and saying comments of like, well, they're not gonna, maybe they won't show up anyway because they're using drugs and they're not really concerned with getting to therapy and accessing these services. The problem with this type of thinking is that it's rooted in stereotypes and stigma. And on a subconscious level, it can influence the quality of care greatly, even though you don't convey these points of view to the client specifically. If you are stating these things and you're thinking about someone in a derogatory or deficit-based framework, then that can translate directly into negative care for that individual. And not only that, but it can be a pervasive kind of impact throughout the organization. If you start to talk about the people that you're offering services to in a negative way, the ramifications of that can be quite severe, and it is not good to promote that kind of discourse. So I hope that's a little bit of clarity there. So back to the development of this logic model, we went from the findings in the interview and the barriers that were illuminated for the clients, and this kind of lack of relationships between the therapists and the clients. And we realized that what we really needed was this idea of relationship promotion. So if you review your text in our book on page 124, there's a good overview of a logic model. I think Dr. Harris provided this resource from the University of Wisconsin. They have logic model resources. The link is here in the slides that will be uploaded to Blackboard. That's actually what I'll be using for this logic model on the following slide. So like I said, we've done the needs assessment, we've conducted interviews, we've analyzed the data. And overall, what we found with regards to the behavioral health services is that there's a lot of avenues that were detrimental to the relationship promotion between therapists and clients. And so we wanted to think about ways to enhance the role of the service provision for the therapist and to improve the services for the clients so that they wanted to come there, and so they felt encouraged and like there was a need for them to come there, and that they could get something positive out of this experience. So here's a little overview of a logic model, and this is really just one way to look at this. And I believe that there's lots of different approaches to do this. So on your left side of the screen, you're going to have all of your inputs. We talk about the target population, who they are, predominantly low income, mental health, substance use, and the importance of inclusive care that doesn't stigmatize your population. The needs statement of the organization, how does that actually influence care based upon the way you describe the organization and operationalize some of the therapist's guidelines? How are folks referred for services? Are they walk-ins? Do they have appropriate insurance? Can they access these services? And then a major one that we noticed was the staffing variations, that the majority of them were part-time staff. And that was a major one, that we realized that everyone was kind of working in their own bubble, kind of disconnected from one another in a way that may not seem like it's detrimental to the organization, but what we found out was that they all had their unique training, their pre-service education that may have been informed as, for instance, like a counselor or a social worker or a psychologist, all very unique and diverse sets of training experience. Maybe more apt to rely on certain types of assessments based upon their professional development. So with that in mind, what we decided was we really need to have a standardized baseline assessments that everyone uses. And from there, you can kind of individualize care where therapists can still have their autonomy and make their own decisions. But when we have something cohesive where everyone can work together, we can really start to understand what's happening with the clients that are coming in and whether or not their care is being improved upon based upon their baseline assessment. Not only that, we can use evidence-based treatments across the board. So we noted that we wanted to move from the assessments that are standardized and consistent to making treatment plans and services. And then really a discharge plan we found was also important because attrition often would occur if people actually thought that they had improved and they just stopped coming back, but there was actually no formal discharge plan that was happening. And so all of these ideas were really meant to facilitate improvements for the client's satisfaction. And we decided that assessments would also be good when they came in and when they finished their appointments, to understand their barriers that they may endure and to understand their relationship with their service provider. Oftentimes there isn't an opportunity for folks to say, I don't actually get along with my therapist. I actually would prefer someone that's similar in my demographics or similar in some other domain, or just someone different than maybe who I'm currently working with. And it's not an easy question or point of view to bring up with your therapist if you actually want to work with someone else. There's no real good way to do that. So what we've created here was an opportunity to assess the clients and hear them. And from valuing their experiences, valuing their time, we can make appropriate changes in a way that improves their care and also improves the service provision. And we allow for relationships to improve and take the burden off of therapists to make those changes. So essentially, in the short term, what we want for outcomes, promote awareness. And just to start thinking about things in a different way and utilize organizational capacities to do so. Improve evidence-based practices, individualize care, and stimulate awareness throughout the organization. And then that leads really into the long term of what we were looking at initially, which is reduce attrition, to better understand the experiences of the clients, better understand the perspectives of the therapists in offering their service provision and why they're taking that individualized approach. And ultimately, improve sustainability with organizational structure. When we talk about external factors that influence all of these, I spoke briefly about pre-service education, and we can think about accreditation standards. If we have psychologists and counselors and social workers all offering care, they're all going to be informed by different accreditation standards for different disciplines, and that all plays a role into service provision. Again, relationships in the organizational structure. life experiences of clients that they're dealing with, and are all an array of external factors that influence the logic model. And the assumption is that what we've laid out in these activities and this participation, that these will be utilized and can actually make sustained improvements. Okay, that's it for now. Please reach out if you have any questions, if this was unclear in any way, and best of luck developing your own logic model.